It was just another Tuesday afternoon when Alex found himself in the small, cramped laundry room of his apartment building. The familiar hum of the washing machines provided a comforting background noise as he methodically folded his t-shirts, occasionally bobbing his head to the music playing through his earbuds. The laundry room wasn't much to look at, just 4 washing machines lined against one wall, 3 dryers on the opposite side, and a small folding table in the middle. The fluorescent lighting flickered occasionally, casting an almost surreal glow over the otherwise mundane space. Alex had been living in the building for nearly 3 years now, and the laundry room had become something of a sanctuary, a place where he could retreat into his thoughts while completing the monotonous task of doing laundry. That day, however, would prove to be anything but ordinary. As Alex was folding his last pair of jeans, the door to the laundry room swung open, and in walked a man he hadn't seen before. The stranger was tall, with dark hair that fell slightly over his eyes, and he carried a laundry basket filled with clothes. Alex pulled out one of his earbuds, offering a casual nod in greeting. The newcomer, who would later introduce himself as Jake, returned the gesture with a slight smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. There was something immediately intriguing about him. Perhaps it was the way he moved with a kind of deliberate carefulness, or maybe it was the thoughtful expression on his face as he surveyed the room. "Any of these dryers working properly?" Jake asked, breaking the silence. His voice was deeper than Alex expected, with a slight accent that was hard to place. Alex gestured toward the dryer on the far end. "That one's the best of the bunch. The middle one runs too hot. Practically cremated my favorite shirt last month." He chuckled, trying to ease the awkwardness that often comes with meeting someone new in a confined space. Jake nodded appreciatively and began loading his wet clothes into the recommended dryer. "Thanks for the tip. I just moved in last week, still figuring out the quirks of this place." He inserted his quarters and pressed the start button, then leaned against the machine, arms crossed over his chest. "Welcome to the building," Alex said, folding his last shirt and placing it neatly in his basket. "I'm Alex, by the way. 3rd floor. Jake. 4th floor." He paused, seeming to consider whether to continue the conversation or retreat into silence. "So, the dryer runs too hot? That's kind of ironic, isn't it?" Alex raised an eyebrow. "Ironic? How so?" And that's when Jake said something that would set the tone for the entire encounter. "Well, when you think about it, heat is what makes clothes pointless in the first place." Alex couldn't help but laugh. It wasn't just a casual statement. It was an invitation to a conversation that was anything but ordinary. "That's quite the philosophical take on laundry," he said, putting down his basket and giving Jake his full attention. "Care to elaborate on that theory?" Jake smiled, more genuinely this time. "Think about it. The whole purpose of clothing, originally, was to keep us warm, right? To protect us from the elements. But when it's hot, when there's an abundance of heat, the primary function of clothing becomes obsolete. Yet we still wear them, bound by social conventions rather than practical necessity." Alex leaned against the folding table, intrigued by this unexpected turn in the conversation. "So you're saying that on a hot day, we're essentially wearing social constructs rather than actual necessities?" "Exactly," Jake nodded, seeming pleased that Alex had caught on so quickly. "It's like we're carrying the weight of societal expectations on our backs, quite literally. And here we are, using machines to apply heat to clean the very things that become unnecessary in heat. Let me explain why this matters beyond just an interesting thought experiment. The way we think about clothing reflects how we navigate between personal comfort and social norms in every aspect of our lives. We're constantly balancing what feels right to us versus what others expect of us. It's a daily negotiation that most of us don't even realize we're engaged in." Alex found himself nodding along, surprisingly captivated by Jake's perspective. "I've never thought about it that way, but it makes a strange kind of sense. So in your ideal world, what would happen when the temperature rises? Would we all just collectively agree to wear less?" Jake laughed, the sound echoing slightly in the small room. "Not necessarily. I'm not advocating for a clothing-optional society, though I suppose that would be the logical extreme of my argument. I'm more interested in questioning why we do the things we do. How many of our daily actions are based on actual needs versus inherited customs? Like how we still say hang up the phone, even though phones don't hang anymore," Alex offered. "Exactly like that," Jake agreed. "Cultural lag. Our practices often outlive their original purposes, but we continue them anyway because they've become part of our shared understanding of how the world works. The dryer hummed loudly between them, the heat it generated making the small room feel even more intimate. Alex found himself studying Jake's face, noticing the way his eyes lit up when he spoke about ideas that excited him. There was something refreshing about having a conversation that went beyond the usual small talk about weather or complaints about the building's management. "So what brought you to this building?" Alex asked, genuinely curious about this philosophical new neighbor. Jake hesitated before answering. "A fresh start, I guess. I was in a relationship that ended, not great. Needed a change of scenery." He shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "What about you? Have you always lived here?" 3 years now," Alex replied. "I work at the design firm about 6 blocks away. The commute is basically non-existent, which makes up for the fact that the heating in this place is as temperamental as the dryers." Jake smiled at that. "Speaking of temperature and clothing again, do you find yourself dressing differently when you know you'll be in an overly heated or cooled environment? Like, do you wear layers to work because the office is freezing, even if it's summer outside?" "All the time," Alex nodded enthusiastically. "My office is like the Arctic, regardless of the season. I have a sweater that permanently lives on the back of my chair. It's like we've created these artificial environments that require us to dress for conditions that don't naturally exist where we are." "Another layer of absurdity," Jake mused. "We build structures to shelter us from the natural world, then create artificial climates within those structures that don't match the outside world. And then we have to dress to accommodate these human-made environments rather than the actual weather." As they continued to talk, Alex noticed that they had both gradually moved closer to each other, now both leaning against the rumbling dryer. The physical proximity added another dimension to their conversation, making Alex acutely aware of the subtle tension building between them. "You know what I think is really interesting about clothing?" Alex said, his voice slightly lower than before. "It's how much we use it to express who we are, or who we want others to think we are. It's like we're all walking around in costumes, playing different roles." Jake's eyes met his, holding his gaze for a moment longer than casual conversation would dictate. "And what role are you playing today?" he asked, gesturing to Alex's simple jeans and faded band t-shirt. Alex laughed, looking down at his outfit. "I work in a creative field, so I don't have to dress up role, I suppose. It's comfortable, but also sends a message about the kind of person I am, or at least, the kind of person I want to be perceived as." "And what kind of person is that?" Jake pressed, seeming genuinely interested in the answer. "Someone relaxed, unpretentious, but still put together enough to be taken seriously," Alex admitted. "What about you? What message are you sending with your outfit?" Jake looked down at his own clothes, dark jeans, and a simple button-up shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. "I guess I'm playing it safe. New environment, new people. I wanted to make a good first impression without standing out too much." There was something vulnerable in that admission that made Alex feel a connection to Jake that went beyond their philosophical discussion about clothing and heat. "Well, for what it's worth, you've made a good impression on me," he said, offering a smile that was met with a slight blush on Jake's cheeks. The dryer buzzed loudly, signaling the end of its cycle and momentarily breaking the tension between them. Jake turned to open the dryer door, releasing a wave of hot air into the already warm room. "See? Heat making clothes pointless again," he joked, pulling out a t-shirt and holding it up. "Now they're too hot to even touch comfortably." Alex laughed, moving to help Jake fold his clothes. It was a small gesture, but it felt natural, as if they'd known each other for much longer than the brief time they'd been talking. As they worked side by side, their hands occasionally brushing against each other, Alex couldn't help but feel that something significant was happening between them. "I had a pretty strict upbringing when it came to clothing," Jake said suddenly, breaking a comfortable silence that had fallen between them. "My parents had very specific ideas about what was appropriate to wear and when. I remember getting in trouble once for wearing shorts to a family dinner. My father said it showed a lack of respect." Alex frowned. "That seems harsh. They were just shorts." "It wasn't really about the shorts," Jake explained, carefully folding a pair of jeans. "It was about conforming to expectations, fitting into a predefined role. I think that's why I'm so interested in questioning these things now. I spent so much of my life trying to dress the part that was expected of me. And now, Alex asked. Jake smiled, a hint of mischief in his eyes. Now I'm trying to figure out what parts one actually want to play, rather than the ones assigned to me. Alex nodded, understanding all too well the struggle to define oneself outside of others' expectations. I went through something similar in college. I was pre-med because that's what my parents wanted, but I was miserable. Switching to graphic design was the most terrifying and liberating thing I've ever done. How did your parents take it? Jake asked. Not well, initially, Alex admitted. But they came around eventually. They saw that I was happier, more myself. Sometimes people just need time to adjust their expectations. Jake nodded thoughtfully. That's hopeful. I'm still working on helping my family adjust their expectations of me in several areas. There was something in the way he said it that made Alex wonder if Jake was talking about more than just career choices or clothing preferences. He felt a pull to ask more, to understand this intriguing man better, but he didn't want to push too far too fast. Instead, he said, You know, there's something freeing about talking to someone new, someone who doesn't have any preconceived notions about who you are. You can just be. Is that who you're being right now? Jake asked, his voice soft. Just you. Alex met his gaze. Yeah, I think so. More than I usually am with people I've just met, anyway. There's something about you that makes it easy to be genuine. The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken possibilities. Jake set down the shirt he was folding and turned to face Alex directly. Can I tell you something that might sound strange, given that we've only just met? Alex nodded, his heart beating a little faster. I feel like I've been wearing a mask for so long that sometimes I forget what my own face looks like, Jake said, his voice barely above a whisper. But talking to you, in this random laundry room of all places, I feel like I'm remembering. The vulnerability in Jake's admission touched something deep within Alex. He understood all too well the feeling of hiding behind carefully constructed facades, of presenting different versions of oneself to different audiences until the lines between performance and authenticity began to blur. I don't think that sounds strange at all, Alex replied, taking a small step closer to Jake. I think most of us are wearing masks most of the time. The trick is finding people who make you feel safe enough to take them off. Jake's eyes searched Alex's face, as if looking for something specific. And do you? Feel safe with me, I mean. The question hung in the air between them, weighted with implications that extended far beyond their philosophical discussion about clothing and societal expectations. Alex took a deep breath, feeling as though he was standing on the edge of something significant. I do, he said finally, which is kind of crazy, considering we've known each other for all of 30 minutes. But there's something about this conversation, about you, that feels, I don't know, important somehow. A smile slowly spread across Jake's face, transforming his features and making him look younger, more carefree. I feel the same way. Like this isn't just a random encounter, but something we were supposed to find. The dryer had long since stopped, but neither of them seemed in any hurry to leave the laundry room. The small space had become a world unto itself, separate from the realities waiting for them outside its door. So, Alex said, leaning back against the dryer, if heat makes clothing pointless, and we're in this very warm laundry room right now, what does that say about what we're wearing? Jake laughed, the sound rich and genuine. Are you suggesting we test my theory in a practical way? I'm just following the logical conclusion of your argument, Alex replied with a grin. For scientific purposes, of course. Of course, Jake agreed, his eyes twinkling with amusement. Though I should point out that my original statement was more metaphorical than literal. I was talking about the contradiction between the practical purpose of clothing and the social constructs that govern how we dress. So you're backing down from your philosophical stance now? Alex teased. Jake shook his head, still smiling. Not backing down, just clarifying. Though I do think there's something to be said for the liberation that comes with shedding unnecessary layers, both literally and figuratively. As if to demonstrate his point, Jake unbuttoned the top button of his shirt, a small gesture that nonetheless felt significant in the context of their conversation. Alex found his eyes drawn to the exposed skin of Jake's neck, a warmth that had nothing to do with the temperature of the laundry room spreading through him. I've always thought it was interesting, Alex said, his voice slightly rougher than before, how removing clothing can be both an act of vulnerability and an assertion of power, depending on the context. Jake nodded slowly. The same action can mean completely different things based on who's doing it, where, and why. It's all about intention and perception. And what's your intention right now? Alex asked boldly, surprising even himself with the directness of the question. Jake held his gaze steadily. To be honest with you, to explore this unexpected connection we seem to have, to see where it might lead. The frankness of his answer sent a thrill through Alex. There was no pretense here, no games, just two people acknowledging a mutual attraction and the potential it held. I'd like that, Alex said softly, to see where this leads. The space between them seemed to contract, the few feet separating them suddenly feeling like too much distance. Jake took a step forward, closing the gap until they were standing close enough that Alex could feel the warmth radiating from his body. You know, Jake said, his voice low, I came down here just to dry my clothes. I never expected to have the most interesting conversation I've had in months. Laundry rooms are magical that way, Alex replied with a smile. All the best connections happen in unexpected places. Jake reached out slowly, giving Alex plenty of time to move away if he wanted to, and gently touched his arm. The contact, though simple, sent electricity coursing through Alex's body. I'm really glad I met you today, Jake said. Me too, Alex whispered. And then, before he could overthink it, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to Jake's. The kiss was tentative at first, a question rather than a statement. But when Jake responded, wrapping an arm around Alex's waist and pulling him closer, it transformed into something more certain, more passionate. The heat that had been building between them since Jake first walked through the door finally found its expression in the meeting of their lips and the press of their bodies against each other. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Alex couldn't help but laugh softly. Well, that escalated quickly. Jake joined in his laughter, his arms still around Alex's waist. I'd say it was a natural progression of our philosophical discussion, wouldn't you? Absolutely, Alex agreed. We were just following the logical conclusion of your heat theory. They stood there for a moment, foreheads touching, sharing the same air and the same sense of wonder at how quickly a mundane laundry day had transformed into something extraordinary. So, Jake said eventually, what happens now? Alex considered the question. Well, first I think we should finish folding your laundry, and then maybe we could continue this conversation somewhere else. My apartment has coffee, or wine, or whatever you'd prefer. Jake smiled, the expression lighting up his entire face. I'd like that. Though I should warn you, I have a lot more philosophical theories that might need exploring. I look forward to hearing all of them, Alex replied, placing another quick kiss on Jake's lips before reluctantly stepping back to resume folding the forgotten laundry. As they worked side by side, occasionally exchanging glances and smiles that held the promise of what was to come, Alex couldn't help but think about the strange and wonderful ways that connections form. How a chance encounter in a laundry room and an unusual observation about heat and clothing could lead to something that felt so significant, so full of potential. When the last of Jake's clothes were folded and placed in his basket, they stood facing each other, both seemingly reluctant to end their time in the laundry room that had become the unexpected setting for the beginning of their story. Ready? Alex asked, picking up his own basket. Jake nodded, gathering his things. Ready. Though I have to say, I'll never look at this laundry room the same way again. Neither will I, Alex agreed with a laugh. It's officially my favorite room in the building now. As they walked out together, their shoulders occasionally brushing in the narrow hallway, Alex couldn't help but feel that something important had shifted in his life. All because of two guys alone in a laundry room and an observation about heat making clothes pointless. Sometimes, the most profound connections begin in the most ordinary places. And sometimes, a simple conversation about clothing can lead to the shedding of metaphorical layers, revealing the authentic selves beneath. For Alex and Jake, the laundry room had become more than just a place to clean clothes. It had become the setting for a new beginning, a space where vulnerability and attraction had combined to create something unexpected and beautiful. As they reached the elevator, Jake turned to Alex with a smile that held both certainty and anticipation. You know, I think doing laundry just became my new favorite chore. Alex laughed, pressing the button for his floor. Mine too. Though next time, maybe we can skip the philosophical debate and go straight to the good part. Where's the fun in that? Jake teased, stepping into the elevator beside Alex. The debate was half the appeal. And as the elevator doors closed behind them, taking them up to continue what they had started, both men knew that whatever happened next, their lives had been irrevocably changed by a chance meeting and a provocative statement about heat and clothing. In the most unexpected of places, they had found something worth exploring, a connection that promised warmth of an entirely different kind. Total _char_count, 18,846.